Hi, welcome to the Android Basics Nanodegree Ask the Expert session. My name is Shania. I'm the lead program manager at Google on the Android Basics program, and we're so excited to have you here today. We're really happy to be able to answer your questions that you've sent in on social media and the forums, and so we're happy to have Chris and Catherine here today. Now, the Android Basics Nanodegree program is a training program to help aspiring developers learn the essentials of Android development. So we want to make this a little bit easier for you. We've categorized all of the questions and into 4 categories: prereqs, curriculum, after graduation, and just random Q&As. So let's welcome Catherine and Chris. How are you guys doing today?
Good.
Doing good.
Catherine, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Catherine Kwan, a developer advocate at Google, and I'm also the curriculum lead with Chris on the Android Basics Nanodegree. Prior to this, I was a developer on the Android apps team at Google, and I've been an Android developer for about 6 years now.
Hi guys, my name is Chris Lay. I am a content lead here at Udacity, particularly focused on our Android-based curriculum. I've been working with these good people here for quite some time, as well as the content team here at Udacity, working on the Android Developer Nanodegree as well as the Android Basics Nanodegree. Prior to Udacity, I was a software engineer at Qualcomm working on a bunch of Android devices, which was pretty cool. And geez, it's about 8 years in the industry right now, so.
It's a long time.
I don't know where the time went, but we're here, so happy to be here.
Yeah, and we're also excited to have created the Android Basics Nanodegree. Why did we start to create the Android Basics Nanodegree program, Catherine?
I think it was like a couple years ago, and we just realized that there was this huge market of people who are interested in building Android apps, but they didn't have programming experience or they didn't have Java experience, and so we created the Android for Beginners course as sort of to make it more accessible for anyone with an idea to be able to build an app. So it's been 2 years and it's been a long journey, but definitely super rewarding after hearing like people's stories and.
For sure. Yeah, I mean the biggest thing I think is just there's been so many ideas about apps that have been tossed around, often deferred to those who are technically inclined to implement them, and we just want to set the tone that anyone that has an idea really can take a step to make those ideas come to life themselves. And we, like Catherine alluded to, we've been working for 2 years to build a path to help you do that.
And so I think that leads us into our first question from Jeff. He has been interested in learning how to program for 7 years, but he hasn't started yet. He has very little programming experience and loves to tinker around with different apps like App Inventor and things like that. How would you help him get started with Android development, Chris?
I'd say, Jeff, yes, get going on Android development because this is definitely awesome for you. I think programming has had this historical notion of being really hard to approach, largely because there are pieces of ambiguity to basically overcome to make progress as a developer. But as Catherine mentioned earlier, we've sat down with our team and really worked hard to help provide a path for you to kind of go through those insights. So it's very common to feel a little apprehensive initially, but I think you'll be really happy with the curriculum that we put together to help you to progress. You can totally do it. So.
Yeah, and in terms of the prerequisites for the program, you don't need any programming experience, and you only need like basic computer skills. So if you know how to use like Microsoft Word or like how to use a search engine and how to use a smartphone, that's basically all you need to get started.
Yeah, and Harshit asks, before taking this course, should he actually take a Java course or should he dive directly into Android development?
I think he should definitely just dive right into it, because the reason why we created this curriculum was that you don't have to learn Java first and then go into Android. You can do Android and Java at the same time.
Awesome. How long does it take to complete the Android Nanodegree? John from San Diego asks.
Yeah, on average, it takes roughly about 6 to 9 months to complete the degree. Obviously, that's going to vary per student depending on the amount of time that you can dedicate weekly. We estimate about 10 hours per week. So depending on how much time you can put in, anywhere between 6 to 9 months on average.
Yeah, and it definitely can go by a lot faster if you have programming experience, or if you're completely new and you just want to review and go at a slower pace, like it can go longer. So it really depends on the person.
Yeah,
Sure.
And Chris, what are some of the personality traits and qualities that make great Android developers?
Ooh, that's a tough one. It's hard to say if there's actually a fixed list, but I think there's a common convergence around certain characteristics that help developers kind of succeed over time and grow as developers. I think one of them is kind of an overwhelming passion for what they're trying to solve, as well as a curiosity and a kind of embracing the fact that the journey can be uncertain at certain points, and having a willingness to learn new things to overcome those challenges. So I think the final bit is really about being determined, with your passion, but to have a sense of grit to really push through the challenges that might arise. And I think, just really being focused and dedicated to the cause that you're trying to solve, I think, is a really good step.
Yeah, I really like how you mentioned the grit aspect, because a lot of developers, like when you get a new task or a new project, you might not know where to start. And this even happens for experienced developers, but the fact that you persist and try to figure out, like, what do you know, what are your questions, get those answered, like you move past it. And I think that's what a seasoned developer.
Being a little fearless in the awkward situations, but pushing forward.
Yeah.
So.
Awesome. Pedro asks, I need help determining which Android Nanodegree to take. I have some experience in Android and in Java, but when I take the intermediate courses for the Android developers, it looks somewhat complicated. Catherine, would you like to tell us about that?
Sure. So we created with Udacity an end-to-end Android training curriculum. So the Android Basics Nanodegree is for someone with 0 or 1 year programming experience, and it covers everything from Java, computer science fundamentals, as well as Android Basics. And then that leads into the Android Developer Nanodegree, which helps prepare people for an entry-level job in Android development. And that covers more advanced topics like performance or Google Play services, different form factors, build systems,
material design.
Computing.
Like building for watches, TVs, living room, things like that. So that's kind of the two places that you can start, either the Android Basics Nanodegree or the intermediate Android Developer Nanodegree.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to add to that, I think in general, if you feel very comfortable with object-oriented abstractions, you feel very fluent with system concepts like parallelism, or even using basic data structures like arrays, array lists, you might want to try jumping into Android Developer immediately. You probably do have some technical background to get you off the ground going quickly there. However, it never hurts to slow down a little bit, and you can always take some time to go into the Android Basics content. We'll focus on specific areas of the platform and learn at a bit more slower pace. But as you build momentum, and if you feel like you're starting to recall some of the concepts that you may have learned before, you can always hop back into the Android developer content as well. Again, the essentials down at the basics level: Java, parallelism, networking, basic data structures, even just how to plan an app, how to approach your design in stages. And then when you're ready, if you feel capable to go really deep with the platform, that's when I think you can really flourish in the Android Developer Nanodegree, when you can explore not only the fundamentals, but just really cool, specific, rich experiences on Android, whether it be phone, tablet, watch, TV, and at that point you're really just trying to focus on making your app sing and be awesome for users.
So, Chris, how much does the Nanodegree cost?
So the Nanodegree is a premium product, and it costs $199 per month.
In US dollars.
In US dollars, just to be clear. And with that experience, you get some distinct support for your learning journey, particularly in the form of active forums that have leaders that have been experienced in the topic areas and are ready to answer your questions. I think, again, one of those big things about learning something new is that you're inevitably going to run into some areas of ambiguity and have some questions. So these channels, whether or not being able to post to a forum and get a response soon, is really critical for your progress. In addition, you can set up one-on-ones. But I think the real special sauce in the Nanodegree is being able to get live code feedback on the projects that you submit. So as you're working towards your Nanodegree, you can submit your project at any time, and it'll go to our network of really qualified reviewers to kind of give you real feedback line by line on your code, so you can really get some really good insights as you progress.
Yeah, I think when I was learning Android development, the code reviews from the other engineers who are more senior than me really helped me, because you're at that detailed level where you correct your understanding and improve as a developer. So.
Same, I have to say, as well.
Yeah, and Jedabay asks, will there be a discount coupon or some financial incentive for the course? Now, with all of the premium services that you guys are offering, they're absolutely fantastic, but we definitely don't want that to hinder anyone to start their Android development journey. So we also offer the courses and instruction for free. If you visit udacity.com/Google, you'll see about 35 and growing courses there that the content is available for free. And then you get premium services on top of that. So you can definitely get started today at any time. Sure. And then continue with your journey with coaches and mentorship and all of those different things.
For sure.
Now, I want to get into kind of the course overview because there's a lot in all of the courses, right?
Yeah.
There's a ton of notes, but there's also really great instruction. We do a really good job of explaining, providing examples. Catherine, do you want to kind of give us an overview of the courses that we've created?
Sure. So we have 4 courses in the Android Basics Nanodegree. The first one, Android for Beginners, starts from the very beginning, and it talks about layouts. How do you lay things out on your screen, and you make a birthday card app in the process to give to a loved one. And then from there we move into making an app that's interactive. So we build up a coffee ordering app where you input information and sends off your order in an email. And so you learn about how to make an app interactive, also learn about like object-oriented programming concepts for the first time. And then in the next course, Android Basics, multi-screen apps, we learn about how to make an app that has multiple screens and show lists of data. And we do that by creating an app for the Miwok Native American tribe. It's a language app, so it lists a bunch of vocab words, and if you click on them, it also plays audio for them, which is really cool. The next course, the Android Basics Networking course, and that one, you learn how to fetch data from the internet and display it on your device. And so we create an earthquake app that shows the top most recent earthquakes in the world, and we fetch it from the USGS site.
That's right.
The last course is the Android Basics Data Storage course, and that one talks about how to store data on your device. So if you leave your app and come back in, your data is still going to be there. And we build a pet shelter app where we keep track of a list of pets, and that's basically the Nanodegree.
Yeah. So Patrick asks, through this program, do you get a good foundation in Java? Chris, what do you think about that?
You know, that's a good question. Because we've had to, I think the basic answer is we teach you the essential Java that you need for doing really good Android development. As far as going deeper features with regards to the language, those are something that you could probably pursue on the side in other courses. However, we'll be using and teaching Java particularly on how to use it well in the framework. Obviously, different features of the language will be used differently, so you could apply some of those skills to other platforms, but then we'll also have to cover the gaps in however those other platforms are designed as well. So a good foundations, again, but particularly tailored to Android development, I'd say.
Great. Now, Roman asks a very typical question, which is actually a really, really good question that I really like to get answered. He asks, I've taken a few Android for Beginners courses here and there, and one thing that they've all had in common is you just jump right in and just start showing you how to build one certain thing. But after those courses, when you're trying to build something on your own, you actually get really stuck and you get a little confused. So will this course concentrate more on the step-by-step learning and the theory behind those things, or will it give you a firm and complete knowledge of Android development? Catherine, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, there was a tricky balance in creating the curriculum between wanting to teach them from the ground up so they would become this superstar developer versus just throwing them into it and just like building really cool things. And I think we chose the latter option because we wanted them to get excited about Android development. We wanted them to have quick wins, to have apps to show their family and friends, and to maybe decide to study computer science more in depth afterwards. So by choosing this approach, we can't go through like tons of examples for every concept about variables and data types, but we do hope that it provides a really good context of when you would actually use these concepts instead of like theoretically going concept after concept about abstract scenarios.
Yeah, I think a key thing that we tried to focus on was making really useful examples. So each thing that we focus on is really practically applied to Android development. You know, traditionally I think you learn concepts in computer science in layers, but I think a lot of you are just really interested in getting building quickly, so we've done our best to create a path through that is meaningful, and along the way you focus directly on Android development, but also pick up some Java, some CS along the way, and some other useful things that'll help you grow as a developer. So.
Yeah, and Preeti asks, he wants to know about JSON in Android. Do we need to talk about that too?
So you're asking about JSON. A lot of technology today in computing revolves around requesting data from the internet. Now, when you do that on the internet, data comes back in these structured formats, so they can be easily extracted for various use cases. In the case, for example, for a mobile app. So JSON is simply one of those formats on how to structure data. It uses this key value semantic. And if you're interested to learn more about that, that's in our third course, Android Basics Networking.
Where he's the instructor.
You'll see me with some more, so and we'll dive into detail on basically what that structure is, using some tools to get a little bit more familiar with it, and then eventually writing code to work with it in your apps. So.
And there is that exercise where you read information from the Twitter API and Instagram.
That's right.
API,
so
right?
You'll see JSON in action in a lot of really useful scenarios, and probably in some of the ways that you're used to hearing about. For example, like data that you get back from Twitter is in the form of JSON, as well as a bunch of other popular services like Facebook and a myriad of other APIs. So.
Yeah. This question comes from Deepak. I see a lot of emphasis on the REST API and other technologies and frameworks that he doesn't know. It would be really great if the panel could explain how does learning Android development and how long it will take in terms of product app development, where exactly REST APIs would help in that development process.
You can start off. Well, Deepak, kudos for getting REST APIs down. That's a pretty technical term in its own right. I think the general thing that you're kind of converging on these days is there's a lot of really interesting data and functionality across the internet these days, especially with mobile and the fact that we live in a pervasive, ubiquitous environment now. So a lot of application experiences are inherently reliant on things that are not local to the device. So in the third course of the Android Basics Nanodegree, we're going to be focusing on how to interact with a web API. So you'll learn how to read the documentation from a bunch of different services, but more than anything, understand the process on how to request information across the internet and then extract it into your app. So really useful skill set, and you'll probably find yourself doing it in a lot of app scenarios. So yeah, look forward to seeing us in the third course, Android Basics Networking.
Awesome. And then here's one more curriculum question. Shridinihi says, how should I begin when I need user input data to be calculated, stored, and to be displayed in different ways to the user? They read a little bit about the SQLite method, but couldn't get the code kickstarted. Catherine, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, so it can be really overwhelming to figure out where to get started. In terms of getting user data from the app, you can definitely check out the Just Java app in the first course, where we build up a coffee ordering app, and that can get you set up with the UI aspect of it. And then in terms of storing data, you can check out our Android Basics data storage course, where we talk about SQLite and how to store data in a database and how to display that back in your app.
Yeah, that course is going to be pretty great, especially just understanding the different data scenarios that you run into an app. You'll learn about lots of things actually across the whole degree per se, but particularly zero in on it when there's lots of metadata. Again, like Catherine said, focusing on how to use an integrated database to store all that information.
So what we learned about the Android operating system's architecture, how about porting? Is there a different course that we're going to teach those things?
That's a good question, and generally is a favorite subject of mine. But there's a lot of software layers that go into making the Android operating system, some of which are very closely tied to the hardware, which is a little bit out of scope, I think, for app development per se. But I think we will definitely focus on helping you build the healthy mindset on how to work with the framework to use some of the functionality that you're probably used to thinking about when you're in the context of mobile devices. For example, we'll teach you how to use the right classes to open a network connection and retrieve data from it. Via the same methodology, at least using Java, you can use the framework to access other key pieces of functionality on a device, like displaying views to a screen, playing sound back, even accessing key sensors on the device like the gyroscope or the accelerometer, for example. So again, it's really about the right mindset on how to use the framework to help you do what you want in the app, and letting the rest of the lower layers assist in making that come to life. So you also asked about porting. Again, porting is largely dependent on the hardware and how Android would sit on top of various pieces of hardware. That's largely a different perspective on development. So we won't be covering that in this particular degree.
But if you are interested in it, you can check out source.android.com for all the code for Android, the Android platform, and it also has documentation articles on there too.
Yeah, for sure. There's just one of the cool things about Android is the fact that the whole stack is open source. So you can go and you can read code in all different pieces of it if you'd like. So definitely check that out if you're interested in I think the end-to-end stack.
Awesome. I'd like to get into after they graduate, because that's always a really big question. Like, I'm taking this degree, but what do I get to do after? And Sachin asks, well, how realistic is the expectation that someone with a rudimentary understanding of programming can go on and create useful Android applications after this nano degree? Catherine?
So after the first lesson of the course, they basically install Android Studio, the professional tool that Android developers use, and then they build an app right away. And it keeps going. Like, we build projects with them, and they also have projects on their own. So they just get you get a lot of exposure to building different apps. And so in those projects, we hope that they kind of go off on their own and explore and kind of like learn on their own.
Yeah.
So kind of take the training wheels off. Like, we're not always going to be there holding their hand and helping them when they get stuck. So we also try to teach them like how to learn in a way. Right. We go over like how to read documentation, and if there's all these things that are really overwhelming to you, how do you pick out the pieces that you do understand? Or if your app is crashing, like how do you go into the debugger and track and look at what is actually happening in your code? So we kind of try to do the best we can to prepare them for the real world.
Yeah, for all types of app scenarios, I think we definitely, I think someone that finishes Android Basics will be prepared to build very basic functionality in a lot of different need areas, depending on the app idea. But like Catherine said, we try to set up the student with the right mindset to pursue things that might not be included in the courses. So again, you'll get a lot of breadth about just the basics of the fundamentals on building for Android. You might get some experience doing some networking, figuring out how to store data, but there might be some additional functionality that you might need for your app, and you can use some of the skills that you learn in the other courses to pursue those those pieces of functionality as well. So.
Yeah, and what I also really like that we've done is we've also set the student up for after graduation, like real job scenarios, like how to work with the team, how to read a code base that's not necessarily your own, because you're not always going to be creating an app from scratch.
Yeah.
And then how to think about bigger problems where you're just adding a single feature, and how does that fit in with the entire app altogether. I really like that aspect of the program as well.
Yeah, and they do some design too, and figure out how to work with the designer for those that are really passionate about.
Or your product manager or anything like that.
Exactly.
The real world scenarios.
Team environments, basically.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so Curtis wants to ask, he's recently graduated from the Android Basics Nanodegree Program.
Nice.
Yay!
Hey, Curtis.
And he wants to know if we will be adding any more scholarships. Now, scholarships are if you were one of the first 100 people to finish the Android Basics Nanodegree, you basically got a scholarship to the Android Developer Nanodegree. And unfortunately, we don't have any more yet, but stay tuned and stay developing, because it's definitely really worth it to be able to continue to develop your Android career and keep building apps and stay in contact with us as well. We definitely can help you on forums and on social and things like that.
And I know I definitely can speak for Udacity here that it's been an overwhelmingly tremendous response to the leaderboard and the scholarship opportunities, and just really thrilled to see so many students engaged. So stick with us, and we'll go from here.
So Javi asks, there are a lot of things written about getting jobs with Udacity, because that's one of the main purposes of this program. But it's all based in the U.S. His question is, what kind of support will help landing a job if he's out of the U.S.?
Yeah, so this is we have a new initiative here with our careers team. We just launched a new site called the Careers Resource Center, which focuses largely on tips and advice for basically preparing for the job search, connecting with employers. A lot of that information is relatively country agnostic, but we do have a site link that will link with this talk that has tips specifically for folks in other countries outside of the US. I think there's a lot of scenarios that are definitely different and varying per region, but again, we're trying to help prepare all of you because our mission here is to democratize education and make that available to anyone around the world, regardless of their situation and context. So,
yeah, and speaking of new programs, we're really excited to talk about this as well. Olympia asks, upon the completion of the Nanodegree, would you recommend applying for the Associate Android Developer Certification? And we're also really excited about this because this is also something new that we've launched recently in 2016 to actually certify Android developers from Google. Now, the Android Basics Nanodegree doesn't cover enough to be able to work on that certification, but it definitely provides a great start.
I think the core essentials for that certificate come from the Developing Android Apps free course. So for folks that where that's an ideal spot to jump in, I definitely encourage you to check that course out as well.
Yeah. Now here's a question we get all the time from Andrew.
What's that?
Does this program prepare you to actually have a solid enough foundation to be an engineer at Google? Catherine.
I'll defer to Catherine on that one too.
Having gone through the engineering interview process at Google, I'd say it's definitely really challenging. They do ask a lot of data structure and algorithm questions, and this was one of the things we struggled with figuring out the trade-off when we were developing our curriculum. Like, do we prepare people to be a software developer, a general software developer, or do we prepare them to be an Android developer? And unfortunately, you've heard about it in the tech industry, like the interview process is kind of broken, where we're testing people on skills that they don't necessarily use in their everyday work. Especially in Android development, you don't really need algorithm knowledge unless you're doing something very specific.
For sure.
Maybe like a very special image processing app or something like that. So I guess the short answer is, like, this Nanodegree is meant to get you interested in computer science and developing apps, and you can like build up a portfolio and maybe like show that to employers who value work experience and will ask you very specific Android questions, and then from there then later on apply to like a bigger tech company.
Yeah. And there's a difference between building Android apps and then developing the core framework of Android, the actual hardware and the software to run actual Android rather than apps that rely on the
there's and we'll talk about this later, but there's many layers of open source technologies and software that go into comprising the whole Android stack, which largely is a big set of knowledge. But I want to encourage students that there's so many opportunities these days, even outside of tech, that are just relying or are just benefiting from the creation of mobile apps. So even beyond Google, there's small businesses, really cool causes around the world that can really benefit from app development. And I think there's just a huge opportunity that folks don't always realize, that they can have impacts in their communities and different businesses just by doing mobile app development. So again, like Catherine said, we had to kind of make a choice as to how we can enable people the best, and I think there's just so many more opportunities right now, and creative ones, at least in the app world, and that's what we focused on. It is, again, building experiences for all the types of Android devices that exist out there.
Yeah, got it. Now, Naeem asks, I'm a beginner in Android app development, and what are the things that I need to keep in mind while developing my Android app to make my app successful? Catherine?
I think the first thing to make sure of is that you're actually solving a real user need, because once you have these skills, it's easy to create things from it. But I think the hard part is to empathize with your user and really make sure that you have a user experience that is helping the user solve a problem. Beyond that, in terms of like the implementation, like there's the core app quality checklist on the Android development documentation site, which lists things that you can check specifically in your app, like behavior, to make sure that you're conforming to the standards of what other Android apps are like on the device.
There's more than one running on the device at the same time.
Yeah, so you just want to be consistent with the other apps on the device, but as well, also like distinguish your app as well. There's also the material design guidelines that the Google design team came up with a couple years ago, and so it's this really beautiful spec that has like instructions and guidance on how to do everything from layout to like motion,
typography,
imagery, everything. So it's a good resource to check out.
Awesome. Now I'd like to get into just regular Q&A.
All right.
So I can throw anything. I can throw anything at you. His name or her name is August Khan, and I hope I said that right. But Android Studio is always releasing new versions of it, and it becomes difficult when and different from the different tutorials when we're teaching it. As a beginner, they get stuck. How do we adapt those tutorials to help with new versions of Android Studio?
Yeah, obviously there's a lot of development and changes that happen along time with the tool set. I think this is a common piece of feedback that we've received from students, that they see changes. How come our courses aren't updated? I think we definitely understand and hear this. So while we may record our content with a particular version, we do plan to provide supplementary material for any changes that happen. So for example, with the newly released constraint layout that was introduced to Android Studio 2.2 or later, I believe. I could be wrong there, but we'll be augmenting the existing content with guides and examples on how you can adapt your current templates that we have recorded with to use the new functionality in the studio. So we plan to update a lot more incrementally, so stay tuned for that.
Yeah, we've always got your back with new updates because they happen so fast all the time.
For sure.
Vivek asks, how do you write test cases to test Android apps?
Good question.
That's a really good question. We actually don't cover it in much depth in our Android Basics Nanodegree or in the more intermediate Nanodegree. But you can write unit tests like you would for any Java application that's not Android specific to just test like specific Java functionality. You can also write espresso tests for testing the UI of your app, testing that certain activities pop up or certain buttons do certain things.
Without having to do it yourself. You can programmatically test the UI, which is really
so it's
cool.
automated. And then in the latest version of Android Studio, isn't there the automated test recorder?
There is.
So you can like manually do it, do the steps on your phone, and then it will record it and then turn that into auto-generated code for you to create the test.
That's really
cool.
Yeah,
it's pretty awesome. So the tools are just getting better and better, and I think that just is really exciting as a developer.
For sure.
Mohammed, he would like to get a little bit more enlightenment on GitHub. And should he take a version control course in order to work with the Android Basics Nanodegree?
Mohammed, that's a good question. For Android Basics as a degree, we don't have a requirement for GitHub skills per se, although I think as you'll see as your career progresses as a developer, just having basic source control skills is kind of critical for your growth, and particularly when you're working with multiple team members that are contributing to code at the same time. So when you're learning with Android Basics, don't feel like you need to take any specific Git courses, but as you build up some experience, you're welcome to take some side courses. We have one at Udacity, and that'll help you prepare as you go forward.
We also put all the code for our course on GitHub so people can browse through the solution code.
So I think there's really cool tools available on that site where you can compare code, and we make our changes and commit so you can easily see small deltas as we teach things. So plenty of graphical tools at least to start with, so you should be at home.
Awesome. Ryan B asks, is it possible to monetize apps in the Android ecosystem? Oh, this is a good one. He has friends who have completed boot camps in iOS, and they're always talking about the ability to make money with their apps. And yes, you can. We don't actually cover it in Android Basics. This is mostly the technical requirements of building the applications. But as far as monetizing and marketing the apps, because what do you do after you build them, right? We do have the tech entrepreneurship classes that do include monetization and all of the new fresh ways to add ads and in-app purchases and all of the great things that you can do to actually make money once you're done building your apps. And Darnell from Indonesia asks, there are events for Android from either Google and Udacity, but they're all in the United States. What do we do about events outside of the United States, particularly in Indonesia? And actually, I think I can take this one. We're continuing to build events all over the world. We'd love to be able to connect with developers and talk to them and make sure that their questions get answered. Alternatively, we have a site called Google Developer Groups that you can actually just go online. It's developers.google.com, and you can click on events and search under your country and find events. I definitely know that there are some in Indonesia, so definitely check it out. We'd love to have a chance to talk to you in person.
Yeah, and our data shows here at Udacity that especially when you combine your online learning with in-person learning, you're that much more likely to continue and matriculate through the program. So it's just a really cool way to meet other developers at the same time and hear about their ideas and their stories, in addition to helping you continue your learning and getting feedback on what you're working on.
Awesome. Last question. Okay. Sai asks, to be good at Android, you need a lot of practice. Which is very, very true. Where do you suggest is the best place to begin building the practice for Android apps?
Well, I mean, I think first and foremost, you're gonna be building a lot with your project journey in the degree. There are 10 projects, roughly spaced around 2 weeks apart from each other. So as you work on those, you'll get a lot of feedback from our code reviewers. But I think there's a lot of opportunities even in your day-to-day lives, whether it be open source code or even small businesses in your area that you could think you could help contribute to their missions by building an app for them, I think.
Yeah, and find someone that you can work with or learn together with, or find someone who's more experienced in Android development who can mentor you and just start practicing and building. You could build an app for yourself, but even more useful is to find someone who needs an app and then build it for them, so you're practicing having a customer. And I think actually when you're ready and you put your app on Google Play, I think that's when you really start learning, because you build up your user base and then you're accountable to them. Now you have to fix bugs, you need to address their feature requests. But it's a good thing, to have users who are excited about your app and to want to, give them more. So.
And who really care about the value that you're trying to provide.
Yeah.
So that really makes a big impact on their day-to-day lives. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe one more thing actually, now that I think about it, is check out developer conferences. I mean, Google has one every year. There's lots of great video sessions. It's a great place to also meet other fellow developers as well. So.
And live viewing parties, if you can't make it to Mountain View in your area. They do viewing parties in almost every country at this point. So you can get together with your friends and view all the sessions and talk about it, and definitely use the technology to build more and better Android apps. So thank you so much. This has been so fun. If you have any more questions about the Android Basics Nanodegree Program, feel free to check us out on social or email us or tweet us. But also check out support@udacity.com. And we've had so much fun having you today. Take care.
Sure.
Bye.